This week, the United States imposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports after peace talks in Islamabad collapsed. The move has split the country sharply. Tonight, two voices make their strongest case on our proposition. The United States naval blockade of Iranian ports is a necessary and justified use of American power. One argues in favor. The other says it is reckless and wrong.
Let me be direct. This blockade is not necessary, and it is not justified. It is a unilateral act of war launched by a president who gave diplomats less than 24 hours in Islamabad before deciding to strangle the Iranian economy instead. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply. The IMF has already cut its global growth forecast to 3.1% and warned of an adverse scenario where oil stays near $100 a barrel. American families are feeling that at the pump and in the grocery aisle right now. And here is what the administration does not want you to focus on. Our closest allies, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, all refuse to join this blockade. NATO partners do not walk away from American operations lightly. When more than 40 countries are calling for freedom of navigation, and our own allies won't send a single ship, that is not a coalition of the willing. That is isolation. The right will tell you this is maximum pressure that works. But Iran is already routing oil through covert offshore networks to bypass our ships. The ceasefire is fraying. And the Senate just voted down a war powers resolution that would have restored Congress's constitutional role. This president launched a war without building a case to the American people. And now he is escalating without a plan to end it.
My opponent says the talks were given only 24 hours. That is simply wrong. The United States and Iran spent more than 21 hours in direct negotiation in Islamabad, the highest-level direct talks since the 1979 revolution. Iran's delegation admitted it lacked the authority to finalize anything and had to return to Tehran. That is not American impatience. That is Iran running out the clock. And as for allies refusing to join, Britain and France have weakened militaries and energy dependence on Middle Eastern oil. Their hesitation reflects their vulnerability, not superior moral judgment. The blockade does not require a permission slip from Paris. Here is the affirmative case. Iran seized control of the Strait of Hormuz, which carries 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil, and began charging tolls exceeding $1 million per ship while launching 21 confirmed attacks on merchant vessels. That is holding the global economy hostage. The blockade, fully implemented within 36 hours of President Trump's order, has already completely halted Iran's sea trade, costing Tehran $435 million a day. Iran came to the table in Islamabad because pressure works. Vance said diplomacy remains open. Trump said Iran wants to make a deal very badly. The entire logic of coercive diplomacy is to raise the cost of non-compliance until the adversary calculates that a deal is cheaper than the pain. We are not in a forever war. We are in a pressure campaign with a clear, stated, unchanging objective. Ensure Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. 2 decades of polite diplomacy failed to curtail that program. The blockade is making progress in days that sanctions and summits could not make in years.
I will grant that pressure can be a legitimate diplomatic tool. But there is a difference between pressure and a blockade that analysts at the Council on Foreign Relations and international law experts describe as an act of war under international law. Iran is already reconstituting its missile bases during the ceasefire. China called this a dangerous and irresponsible act. Oil is still near $90 a barrel. If this pressure campaign tips into full resumption of hostilities, every American will pay the price. And this administration has no endgame beyond a deal it could not close in Islamabad.
One side says the blockade is coercive diplomacy that is already working. The other says it is an illegal act of war that isolates America and punishes ordinary people worldwide. That is the sharpest edge of this debate, and it is far from resolved.